There are wounds that bleed loud, and then there are wounds that bleed in silence. The kind that leave no visible scars, yet ache more deeply than any sword ever could. Perhaps you know this pain, the quiet pain of being hurt in ways words cannot express, of being betrayed behind your back, smiled at to your face, and abandoned when you needed someone the most. You didn't cry out for help because you knew no one would hear. You stayed silent because speaking your truth seemed too costly, and so you carried it, your ache, your confusion, your silent torment. The world around you never knew. To them you were strong, smiling, holding it together, but inside you were shattering piece by piece. And while they laughed, while they prospered, while they found joy in your struggle or remained indifferent to your downfall, you waited. You wondered, does God see this? Does He hear the cries I never voiced? Can He feel the pain I never spoke? Let me assure you, He does. God does not need noise to notice injustice. He does not require confession to discern the truth. He saw what they did when no one else did. He saw the slight gestures, the dismissive tones, the conversations they had about you when you weren't in the room. He heard what they whispered, the lies they crafted, the truths they twisted to favor themselves. They believed their cruelty could remain hidden beneath the veil of silence. But no pain goes unnoticed by the one who sees in secret. You thought your silence made you weak, but in truth, it made you sacred. Because silence is where God dwells, and while you suffered quietly, heaven was writing your restoration in thunder. You may have been broken in whispers, but you will be restored in a roar. Those who hurt you silently underestimated the reach of God's justice. They mistook your endurance for helplessness, your patience for defeat, but little did they know, God was listening the entire time. Have you ever watched how nature works in silence? A seed splits open in the earth, not with a bang, but with sacred stillness, and yet from that breaking comes a mighty tree. So too, your silent suffering is not the end of your story, it is the soil from which God is growing something magnificent. A restoration not whispered, but proclaimed, not quiet, but loud, not hidden, but divine. There is a restoration coming for you that will not be subtle. It will not be private. It will be loud enough that even those who walked away will hear of it. Loud enough that the very ones who hurt you will have no choice but to witness the glory of what God is doing in your life. Because God does not just mend what's broken, He multiplies it, beautifies it, and lifts it to a place even you never imagined. Now, pause for a moment. Could it be that the silence of your pain was preparing the stage for the volume of your blessing? That the hiddenness of your struggle was merely the prelude to the public unveiling of your strength? The time is near when God will make it clear. The ones they wounded He will raise, the ones they dismissed He will defend, and the ones they betrayed He will bless in full view. God saw what you endured in secret. There are moments in life when our pain is so private, so personal, so deeply buried in the hidden chambers of the heart that not a single soul around us knows what we're carrying. We walk through the day with smiles stretched across our faces, while inside we ache with a sorrow no one sees. We respond kindly to those who wrong us. We sit silently through insults disguised as jokes. We remain loyal to those who betray us, quietly, and the world in all its noise moves on as if our pain never existed. But God does not move on. He does not scroll past your silent cries or overlook your unspoken wounds. He is not like man, who needs noise to pay attention or evidence to believe. God saw it. He saw it all. He saw the night you laid on your bed with your hands clasped, too broken to form a prayer but still whispering his name. He saw how you walked away from the confrontation, even though you had every right to fight back. He saw the messages you didn't respond to, the words you swallowed, the grace you extended when justice was due. He watched as you endured the quiet rejection, the cold shoulders, the conversations that excluded you deliberately. He heard the sighs that no one else heard, the sighs that came after smiling through the pain. And he took note. Your silence did not hide your suffering from heaven. In fact, it made it all the more sacred. There is something profoundly holy about the one who suffers righteously, who endures injustice without bitterness, who chooses love over retaliation, who weeps in secret but still worships in public. Such souls are not forgotten. They are marked by God. You must understand that God is not unaware of what was done to you. Every act of quiet cruelty, every betrayal that went unseen by human eyes, every manipulation that tried to paint you as the villain, he saw it all. And because he saw it, he will act. Not always in the time we desire, not always in the way we imagine, but always in accordance with his perfect justice. We often long for immediate vindication. We want the truth to come out now. We want them to realize what they did. We want the world to see our innocence. But God's justice is not rushed because it is eternal. When he moves, he does not just balance the scales, he rewrites the narrative. He does not merely correct the lie, he redeems the entire story. So if you feel like your pain has gone unnoticed, if you wonder whether your silent endurance meant anything at all, remember this: the Judge of heaven and earth saw every detail, and when he restores, he will do so in a way that no one can deny. You will not need to explain yourself. You will not need to expose what was done. Your healing will speak for itself, and your story, once hidden in sorrow, will echo loudly in the halls of redemption. Let others think they got away with what they did. Let them continue their performance for the world. You don't need to shout the truth, because God saw what you endured in secret, and he is preparing to restore you in ways so divine, even your enemies will be silenced. Your silent tears were prayers in disguise. There is a language that heaven understands better than any spoken word. The language of tears, not the kind shed for show, but the ones that fall in silence, unnoticed by the world, born not from weakness but from deep places of trust and surrender. These are the tears that carry pain, yes, but also hope. The tears that rise when you have no words left to say, yet still believe that someone above is listening. Perhaps you've been there, sitting in the stillness of the night, overwhelmed by the weight of what others have done, the sting of betrayal, the confusion of false accusations, the exhaustion of always having to be strong. You didn't speak it aloud because you knew people wouldn't understand. You didn't post it online because your dignity refused to seek pity. But in the quiet of your room you cried. He broke, and God listened. You may have thought those tears were signs of failure, but they were sacred offerings. While others saw nothing, heaven recorded everything. Every tear you shed was caught by divine hands. Every sob that escaped your chest was heard in heaven's throne room. Not one drop was wasted. Each was a prayer, and not just any prayer, a cry for justice, for comfort, for deliverance that moved the very heart of God. Do you realize what it means for God to see your tears? It means he is not a distant observer. He is near. He is close enough to collect what falls from your eyes. It means that your pain is not just acknowledged, it is valued. It is holy. The tears you cried because someone hurt you and walked away, the ones you cried because you felt alone, The ones that came when you said, "Lord, I don't know how much more I can take." They did not go unanswered. When people hurt us, silently, the injustice is often compounded by the lack of validation. We are left wondering if we're just too sensitive, if maybe we deserved it, if perhaps no one will ever truly understand. But your tears were your soul's way of calling out to the one who understands perfectly, and he responded not with indifference, but with intention. Sometimes we think God is slow to answer, but his delay is never neglect. It is design. He was storing every tear as evidence of your restraint, your suffering, your faith. And when the time comes, and it will, he will turn those silent tears into a testimony so loud it will shake the very foundation of the lies told about you. What others thought they got away with, what they believed time would cover up, God is already uncovering. And the proof? It was hidden in your tears all along. Those who hurt you may have dismissed your silence as weakness, but God saw it as worship. He saw the trust it took to cry to him instead of retaliate. And now he is preparing to answer those hidden prayers with a restoration that would be heard far and wide. You thought no one saw, but heaven did. You thought your prayers were unspoken, but your tears spoke volumes. And now, God is preparing to write a new chapter in your life, louder, brighter, and more powerful than the pain that brought you to your knees. Their silence toward your pain will be met with God's voice of justice. There's a particular cruelty in silence, not the silence of contemplation or peace, but the silence that follows when someone knows they've hurt you and chooses not to care. That silence is deafening. It echoes in the chambers of your heart like a bell that won't stop ringing. They watched your spirit bend under the weight of their absence. They watched you slowly wither in confusion, never offering the dignity of an apology or even the clarity of truth. And in their indifference, you began to question your own worth. You wondered if perhaps your pain didn't matter at all. But there is one whose silence is never indifference. God's silence is not the absence of justice. It is the preparation of it. When people wound you and walk away, when they turn their heads as if your cries were nothing more than background noise, they are not escaping judgment. They are simply ignoring the eyes that see everything, including the motives of the heart. God is not like man. He does not need your voice to notice your agony. He does not require an audience to defend the defenseless. And while they ignored your cries, your sleepless nights, and the fracture they caused in your soul, God has already begun to speak. Not in the loud voice of condemnation, but in the steady, deliberate voice of justice. His justice does not shout to prove a point. It moves like a river, strong and unstoppable, and when it arrives, it speaks not only on your behalf, but for every moment you endured what they thought would go unnoticed. Have you ever considered how loud God's justice truly is? It is loud enough to expose hidden things without your involvement, loud enough to reverse every false narrative spun about you, loud enough to cause those who dismissed your pain to suddenly feel its echo in their own lives, and not out of cruelty, but as a mirror, a divine reflection. For God does not let the righteous suffer in silence forever. He has promised to be the defender of the broken, the voice for the voiceless, and the shield for the weary. The pain they overlooked will be the very thing God uses to highlight His presence in your life, and they will wonder how the very one they tried to silence now walks in favor and restoration. Because God's justice is not just about retribution, it is about revelation. It reveals the truth. It separates the lie from the light, and it lifts up the humble while humbling the proud. Let them remain quiet if they choose. Let them deny your pain and act as if nothing happened. For every word they refuse to speak, God will speak on your behalf. And when He speaks, the world will not be able to ignore it. The same ones who turned away in silence will hear it clearly. This one is mine. I have seen, I have heard, and now I will answer. What was done in the dark will be brought into light. There is a strange confidence some people carry when they believe their actions will remain hidden. When the betrayal is subtle, the words are whispered behind closed doors, the damage is carefully crafted to avoid detection. These are the deeds done in darkness. To the human eye, they appear harmless or even invisible. The victim is left with no proof, only the deep knowing that something sacred was violated. And the violators? They carry on as though nothing ever happened, cloaked in the illusion that secrecy is the same as safety. But darkness is never safe from God. It is merely a stage He allows, for a time. In the silence of your suffering, you may have wondered why God allowed the deceit to remain covered. Why did He not expose them instantly? Why did He allow you to bear the weight of rumors, gossip, and false perceptions? The answer is as divine as it is unsettling. God does not operate on our timeline because He is not merely interested in punishing the wrong. He is committed to revealing the truth in full, undeniable clarity. When God brings things into the light, He doesn't just shine a spotlight on the sin. He illuminates the soul. He uncovers the intention, the manipulation, the quiet strategies people used to elevate themselves by stepping on others. And that kind of light cannot be argued with. It reveals all. It lays bare what was thought to be cleverly hidden. It makes plain what was meant to confuse. And when that light falls, it doesn't just justify you. It teaches everyone around you to discern more deeply. You see, while you were hurting, God was arranging circumstances, aligning hearts, orchestrating moments that would eventually make the truth impossible to deny. Because God doesn't expose to shame, He exposes to heal, to vindicate, and to realign what was unjustly twisted. Think about how the morning sun creeps across the landscape, slowly but relentlessly revealing everything that was hidden by the night. That is how divine justice works. Not all at once, but fully. Not for revenge, but for righteousness. And when it arrives, the very people who once felt emboldened by secrecy will be startled by the clarity of what is suddenly known. You don't need to force the truth to the surface. You don't need to retaliate or gather your own audience to tell your side. You only need to wait. Wait for the light, for it is coming. And when it does, every lie will unravel, every mask will slip, every shadow will retreat. And in that light you will stand, not as the victim they painted you to be, but as the chosen one God preserved in silence, only to raise in glory. You will rise in front of the same people who watched you fall. There is a unique kind of silence that follows a fall. The room goes quiet. People who once praised you avert their eyes. Some whisper, some smirk, some say nothing at all, but their silence screams. It is in this silence that you begin to question everything, not just your worth, but your identity. The same people who once claimed to believe in you now walk away without looking back. And you, left in the ashes of your humiliation, begin to wonder, will I ever rise again? It is a cruel thing to be broken in front of spectators, to fall while others watch with folded arms. Some of them clapped when you stumbled, others kept their hands in their pockets, too invested in their own pride to lift you up. And yet there you lay, on the cold floor of abandonment, thinking perhaps that this was the end, that maybe this failure, this betrayal, this heartbreak would be your last note. But the author of your story never writes endings in ink until redemption has spoken. You must understand that your fall was never final. It was never meant to be a conclusion. It was permitted, yes, allowed, for a purpose far greater than your humiliation. Because there are some rises that must take place in public, in front of the very audience that witnessed your collapse, not to shame them, but to glorify the one who lifts you from dust. God has a peculiar way of choosing the moment of restoration. He doesn't raise you in private where no one can see it. He doesn't fix you in secret while your enemies carry on unbothered. He waits. He allows the silence to grow thick. He allows them to assume you've been forsaken. And then, in His timing, not yours, He lifts you in front of every single one of them. The same eyes that look down on you will now look up in awe, not because of your strength, but because of the strength He poured into you when no one else believed you were worth saving. There is something sacred about being raised where you fell. It is not about vengeance. It is not about pride. It is about justice. It is about truth. It is about the glory of God being revealed in a way that no one can deny. When you rise in front of those who watched you fall, it becomes a divine testimony, one that says, yes, I was broken, yes, I was abandoned, yes, I was betrayed, but look what God has done. They thought your silence meant defeat. They misunderstood your stillness as surrender. But while you were quiet, you were healing, you were praying, you were waiting. And God, in His mercy, was preparing a table for you in the presence of those who doubted you, dismissed you, and delighted in your downfall. There is deep spiritual meaning in that kind of restoration. It is not petty, it is prophetic. Because God does not raise you for revenge, He raises you for revelation. So that others may see His fingerprints on your life, so that those who scoffed may reflect, so that those who remain silent may understand that every fall has the potential to be a setup for a greater unveiling of glory. Do not despise the ones who watched you suffer. They were necessary, not as supporters, but as witnesses, because there are some stories that require an audience, and yours is one of them. You were never meant to disappear quietly. You were never meant to stay buried under the weight of what others did to you. You were meant to rise, not in secret, but in the light. You were meant to walk again, not ashamed, but anointed, and your rising will not be subtle. It will be loud in the eyes of those who saw your fall, and undeniable in the hearts of those who doubted your value. You don't need to plan your moment of redemption. God already has. You don't need to rehearse what you'll say when the truth comes to light. Your life will speak. Your healing will speak. Your peace, your strength, your endurance, each will testify louder than any defense you could offer. The very ones who shook their heads in quiet satisfaction when you were down will see you lifted. They will witness the divine reversal, and in that moment it will become clear you were never forsaken. You were being refined. You were not cast aside. You were being prepared. And when you rise, because you will, they will have no choice but to acknowledge that it was not luck, not human effort, but the hand of God that raised you, in front of the same people who once thought they had seen your end. God will make you the testimony they never expected. There's something profoundly humbling about becoming the very example others didn't believe in. When people dismiss you, overlook you, and count you out, they rarely imagine that your story could be the one God chooses to highlight. They think your pain disqualifies you, your brokenness discredits you, and your silence makes you irrelevant. But in the eyes of heaven, those very things, the pain, the silence, the rejection, are ingredients in a divine transformation. God does not select the proud to carry his glory. He chooses the wounded, the overlooked, the misunderstood. Those who walk through fire without applause, who remain faithful without recognition, who continue to believe in goodness even when surrounded by cruelty. And while others are busy labeling you based on your past or your pain, God is quietly turning your life into a living testimony, one that will be so radiant, so undeniable, that even your doubters will fall silent. You were not chosen to be pitied, you were chosen to be revealed. What you went through wasn't random, it was the sculpting of your soul. Every betrayal was allowed to teach you depth. Every season of loneliness drew you into closer intimacy with the divine. And every silent heartbreak taught you the sound of God's voice in the stillness. The world may have looked at your suffering and called it weakness, but God saw the seeds of a testimony being sown, one that would blossom in full view of those who believed they had you figured out. It is not uncommon for people to define you by your lowest moment. They remember your mistake, your breakdown, your absence. They tie your worth to the season of struggle they witnessed and use it as the metric of your value. But what they fail to see is that you were never meant to stay in that season. You were passing through it, being refined by it, being taught things that only fire can teach. And now, as God begins to raise you, He will not simply restore what you lost. He will use you as a display of what divine mercy can accomplish. Your story will not be small, it will not be hidden, it will not be something you have to explain or defend. It will speak for itself. The same mouths that spoke lightly of you will now whisper in awe, not because you sought revenge, not because you demanded attention, but because the transformation will be so clear, so profound, that it cannot be ignored. Do you know what it means to become a testimony? It means that your life becomes proof, living, breathing proof that God still heals, still defends, still restores, and still lifts up those who others abandon. It means that your scars no longer carry shame, they carry stories. Stories of survival, of grace, of beauty formed in darkness. It means that the ones who try to break you will unknowingly contribute to your glory, because your rise will include everything they did and still eclipse it with goodness. You will become the proof that purity can endure betrayal, that kindness can survive cruelty, and that those who choose God over revenge are never left behind. While others tried to rewrite your identity through lies and manipulation, God was busy rewriting your destiny, and the pages of your future are far more compelling than the chapters of your pain. There will be people who come across your story and see in you the reflection of their own hidden struggles. They will find hope in your strength, peace in your endurance, and inspiration in your restoration. You will become the light they never expected to find in someone who had been so bruised. And that is the miracle. That is the testimony. You will be evidence that God uses the forgotten to lead, the rejected to rise, and the silent to sing. You were never meant to remain in the shadows. You were not created to merely survive the damage. You were shaped to shine through it. You were designed to carry a grace so deep, so radiant, that it would draw others out of their own darkness. And God, in His mercy, will use your life as a mirror so that those who hurt you will see not only what they did, but who you became in spite of it. There will come a time when people speak your name with reverence, not because you demanded it, but because God honored you in front of them. Your name will no longer be linked to the story they tried to spread. It will be connected to a testimony they never saw coming. And when they look at you, they will see what it looks like when God chooses someone no one else expected to rise and writes a masterpiece from what others tried to destroy. You will be louder than their lies by simply living in God's blessing. Lies have a way of spreading quickly. They slither into the minds of others, distorting perception, poisoning hearts, and building false images with whispered half-truths. Sometimes the lies are loud, repeated often enough to become accepted as truth. Other times they are quiet insinuations, deliberately vague and strategic, crafted to slowly erode your reputation. And when you're the target of those lies, especially when they come from people you trusted, the silence of truth can feel unbearable. You wanted to speak, to defend yourself, to shout from the rooftops that it wasn't true, that they twisted your words, manipulated your actions, exaggerated your faults while hiding their own intentions. But something in you knew your defense wouldn't matter to those who already decided not to see clearly. You chose silence, not because you had no words, but because you had wisdom. Because you knew the battle didn't belong to you, it belonged to God. It's in that silence that many feel forgotten, misunderstood, defeated. But God does His greatest work when no one is watching. While the world believed their lies, God was preparing to raise your life as a testament to His truth. And when God decides to bless you, no lie, no matter how loudly it was spoken, can overpower the evidence of His hand on your life. You will not need to explain yourself. You will not need to confront those who twisted the truth. You won't have to call out names or relive what they did, because your life, your peace, your fruit will be louder than anything they ever said about you. When God blesses someone, the evidence cannot be debated. It silences the mouths that once spoke harm. It disarms the hands that tried to destroy. And it humbles the hearts that were once proud enough to think they could write your ending. The same people who believed false stories about you will be forced to reconcile with the undeniable favor that surrounds you. Male companions, blessings from God are not merely about wealth or success. They are about restoration, about joy that no bitterness can steal, about peace that contradicts your past, about doors opening in places your enemies swore you'd never step into. It's the kind of transformation that doesn't just help you heal, it helps others witness the truth through your life. And the beauty is this: you won't even have to try to prove them wrong. You'll just live. You'll walk in grace, carry wisdom, radiate peace. You'll love more deeply, serve more sincerely, and grow more beautifully. That will be your voice. That will be the volume that drowns out their whispers. Because nothing makes a lie disappear faster than undeniable truth. You don't need to defend your name when God Himself becomes your vindicator. There is no need to match the noise of the accuser when heaven is orchestrating your rise. The same people who whispered behind your back will one day speak of your strength, your growth, your peace. And they'll do it not because they want to, but because the fruit in your life will speak so loudly that they cannot deny it. Let them talk, let them spin their stories, let them gather in their circles and pretend they know who you are. It will not stop the blessing, it will not block the favor, and it certainly will not alter the outcome that God has ordained. If anything, their lies have only amplified the contrast, because when you rise with dignity, when your life flourishes without bitterness, when your spirit remains unshaken despite the betrayal, that becomes your message. And what a message it will be. People will look at you and wonder how you're still standing, how your eyes still carry light, how your heart remains soft. They won't understand that it wasn't your strength, it was God's covering. They will marvel not at your defense, but at your endurance, at the quiet way you walked through fire and emerged without the smell of smoke, at the gentleness in your tone despite the sharpness of their tongues. That is how you'll speak louder than their lies, not with rebuttals, but with resilience. You will not just survive what they did. You will outgrow it, outshine it, and outlast it. Because when God decides that your life will be a display of His goodness, no amount of gossip can dim that light. And while others scramble to maintain the illusions they've crafted, you will rise steadily, quietly, until suddenly your life is so undeniably blessed that it roars with truth. There is a certain beauty in divine justice. It doesn't arrive with haste, but with precision. It doesn't seek revenge, but restoration. And when God steps in, He doesn't merely mend what was broken. He exalts what was overlooked, redeems what was discarded, and lifts what others tried to bury. You were hurt in silence. You cried behind closed doors, endured mistreatment without an audience, and bore burdens that few could see. But heaven saw it all. God was there when no one else stood beside you. He heard the words they didn't say, felt the daggers they concealed with smiles, and counted every tear that soaked your pillow in the quiet hours of the night. And now, the one who saw it all is rising to restore you, not quietly but loudly. This is not the end for you. It is the unveiling. God is not only healing your heart, He is elevating your life. He is turning your hidden pain into a public testimony. The very people who thought they had silenced your light will now watch as you rise with greater brilliance than before, and your story will not be defined by what they did. It will be defined by what God did in you, through you, and for you. Margaret, so walk forward, not with bitterness, but with boldness. You don't need to shout your side of the story. You only need to live, to breathe, to move in alignment with the grace that's carrying you. Because your life, redeemed and renewed, will speak volumes. It will echo louder than their lies, shine brighter than their betrayal, and stand taller than their silence. They hurt you silently, but now God will restore you loudly. Let that be your peace, let that be your promise, and let that be your power.